I woke up this morning and I was completely floored by just the reality that it was almost exactly 1 year ago today that I was sitting in this room and we were recording the podcast, filming it.
Wow.
And that has hit me all morning. Like, oh my God, 1 year ago. And like, what a difference a year makes.
I mean,
so cool.
Watching your growth over that year is just so wild. And also thinking about like how we've all grown. We've talked about this before recording it, but it's been pretty transformational. I really feel like everyone should have at least multiple points during the year where they think back where they were a year ago that day and just sit with and integrate their growth, because it's so easy to keep going and not look at it. But when you look at it, it's like it cements it in a new way too.
Totally. I think an interesting parallel between now and then was when we first went to record the episodic storytelling pieces with Sarah. We had a plan, but then whatever was naturally meant to come out just came out of her, and we were all totally shocked and excited about what was meant to be birthed during that time. And I remember you felt so good and so confident, and it was like, wow, like this experience is really more than I could have ever planned or imagined. And now we sort of have the same feeling now, looking back at the entirety of season 1, where everything that we planned or thought was going to happen, a different version of it emerged and like left us with totally new, amazing feelings about what this podcast even is.
It's kind of crazy for me because I feel like that was a lifetime ago. I listened to the episode that just aired last week, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I sat there and I talked about this stuff. Yeah, that's really me. But it felt like decades ago, and when I think about the growth and, oh my gosh, like almost just transformative moment this has been, 12 months of working on this with you both and trying all these new things and pivoting and, just it's extraordinary. If you had told me 10 years ago this was going to happen for me in my 50s, I would have thought you were crazy. And here we sit, and I can't even wait like for next year. I'm like, well, what more could happen that I am completely unprepared for and incredibly excited about? It's opened me up in such huge ways to the unknown, to the I don't know, and gotten me so comfortable with sitting in that uncertainty. I mean, we were going to do 12 episodes, and it was going to, it could be X, Y, and Z, and these people were going to be involved, and it was going to roll out this way. And even, even after the first couple episodes, we started pivoting and shifting and getting creative and following our hearts. And, it just, this has been such a great year.
I think one thing, I get asked this a lot, but people have this like intuitive interest in starting a podcast. And so many people are like, well, there's so much to do. Can I do it? Who am I to have this voice? Who am I to step into this? What would you say for someone out there who is even just getting a little glimmer of maybe I should start a podcast? Like something about this appeals to me. What would you say to that person? And I even have a friend's dad. I was just talking to him, and he used to do like some radio interviewing and writing back in the day. And he's in his 70s now. And his kids are like, you should do a podcast, like just random things, your thoughts. Like, we want to hear it. You have such a great voice. Like, do it. And he's like, oh, I don't know. But it's like for him, for the people out there that have that interest, like, what would you say the process was like not coming from a podcasting world?
Oh gosh, that's hard. That's really hard. But as you were talking, I had this moment where I saw myself as a 7th grader, okay, in a speech competition, having to give this speech in 7th grade. And I remember feeling like I had something very important to say. And all the conflict I had in me about, did I have a right to say it? Could I say it with the passion that I felt it? Could I stand up tall in front of everyone and declare it? Like that was a theme that reoccurred in my life in high school, in college, in my 20s and my 30s and my 40s. And I kept looking for places to speak up. And I looked for places that were like a kind of like, okay, you know, that would be socially approved, I guess, if you will, you know. So in the context of a job, or in the context of working on a project, in a context of my work in politics, in a context of my work in philanthropy, I always tried to find a context that would be socially acceptable, right? So that I could say what I really needed to say, but not in a way that might put me out there so significantly with just my words, my story, my voice, my thoughts. And, you know, I tripped around and danced around this for like 40 years. Not that I was going to start a podcast in 7th grade. They didn't exist. But I would say, just fucking do it. You know, just say it. Just do it. And find the people you need to help you make it work, right? I didn't know how to start a podcast. I needed you guys. I didn't know how to produce a podcast. I didn't really want to do all the research on my own either, you know, and try to teach myself how to do it. I had a real vision for what I wanted this to actually look like for people who watched it or listened to it, you know. And so find some people who could support you and just go. I think the thing I was maybe worried about, you know, this was in one of the episodes, the sort of being too much, you know, too loud, too opinionated, you know, all that stuff. God, it just keeps us from being who we're really meant to be. This year has been about me, and I think us stepping into our authenticity. I mean, we said that that's what this was going to be about, but we actually had to do it. And not just in the episodes, because that doesn't work. Because you can't say, oh, I want to be my most authentic self, but only in my podcast.
Okay.
Right. You know, I don't want, but not in my life, not in my real life, not the way I take care of myself, not in my relationships, not as a parent. No. I just want to do it in my podcast. Well, you know, this year has been a year of the ripple effect, for me at least, of all the places in my life that needed me to be more authentic.
Yeah. I'm curious what being authentic really feels like to you guys. And it's such a buzzword. You know, people use that word authenticity, be yourself all the time. And I think when you embark on this journey to be more of yourself, you know, it's kind of uncomfortable and shaky at first. Like sometimes you overcorrect. You're like, well, then I'm going to set really hard boundaries and it comes off as mean. Or, well, then I'm going to like express something disruptive because I have that feeling inside of me. And for me, when I really feel in touch with my authenticity, it's like I don't even notice. Like I'm not that aware of myself. I'm just totally being. And it's only in the reflection that I'm like, wow, I was so present. I was really authentic. I didn't care what anybody thought of me, but I wasn't going in being like, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. It's only something I realized in retrospect. So curious, like what the moment felt like for you when you looked back and you were like, wow, I've really been stepping into my authenticity, because I think it's something that almost just happens. Like the intention needs to be there. And I think a certain amount of inner work needs to be done to feel like I am okay with the vulnerability it takes to be in my presence and be myself. And that's an experiment, and there's no 10 steps to doing that, but like I'm going to try a little bit more every single day. Curious how that came out for you guys.
Oh gosh. I feel like you kind of nailed it, where it's like when you are in your truest sense of authenticity at this level, you don't know that you're in it. You only can know reflecting after. I think for me, one word that comes up when I know I'm in it is just like joy. Like I am like in my playful, excited, passionate about something energy. Maybe it's because I'm a generator in human design and that's like the sacral authority thing. But I just feel like this sort of excitement and lit upness by life. And it's like, okay, how am I going to express that in different ways? And I think over the course of this year and our project together to even tapping into different levels of authenticity behind the scenes and in the production end of things, right? Like, what kind of leader did I want to be? What kind of manager of teams did I want to be? Like, how did I want to handle editing or this or that? Like, we worked with so many different people on this project. And I remember in the beginning, our incredible director, Deb, and I were like, she was like, we need to script out every moment that we're going to have for this interview. I was like, no. Like, it's in our minds. We can put in the arc and we got it. And she's like, no. We need to have the arc written out. And I was like, okay, we'll do it. But like, I don't think we need it in the moment. And so we went back and forth and we were like so overly prepared. But it was so interesting because Deb needed that preparation to be in her genius when she recorded. But for me, I actually didn't need that. It was like over preparation. And so how can you have these two different working styles coexist without one needing to like dominate on the other, right? Like so I learned so much about, okay, cool. If a team member needs that, I'm going to give that to her full stop. And then I'm going to not really take it in that much. And I'm going to just be present. Because I think so much of the one-on-one interviews we did, Sarah, I didn't look at my papers at all. I was like, I want to feed off your energy. I just want to sit with you. I want to hear what you're saying. And then I want to pull the threads that drop into my mind about where we should go next and let that lead the charge. But that was such an interesting exercise in like expressing authenticity and different working styles. That was a huge theme that came up too for all of us this season.
I remember before every episode that we recorded, you would give me 3 things to think about, like maybe 90 seconds before we started, and it came down to that. I'm like, give me 3 things, like no more than 3. Let's just help me dial in. For me, I think what I've noticed is I don't have to try so hard. For me, authenticity equates to ease. There's an ease to life right now. And even in some really, really hard stuff, there is an ease. There is a sense of like, I can do this. I've got this. I don't need to worry about this. There's kind of no point in worrying about it. There's a giant unknown. There's this, there's that. I'm just going to step into it. I can handle it. I can handle whatever comes. I notice an ease to like taking care of myself. This morning I got out of bed. I made a cup of coffee. I had a great morning, but I just knew I needed to go put my clothes on and get into the gym. And I had a great workout, and there wasn't a like, oh, I should go. I don't want to go. Oh, I got to get there. Oh, maybe I'll go later. I'll do it tomorrow, And I've started to tune into that when there's that resistance. For me, then there's something that is inauthentic about what I'm trying to do. Doesn't mean I can't do it, but I've been trying to pay more attention to the resistance. What's off here? What's not right? Because I think ultimately, this is a huge thing. I didn't believe that life could be so good and simple and easy. I thought everything had to be so hard. And if it wasn't hard, I needed to make it hard to make it worth it. Because I had this idea that it's not worth it unless it's hard, unless it's work, unless it requires effort. Yes, there's work to be done and there's effort to put out there, but it doesn't have to be so hard. I don't know if that makes sense. Does it? Does that?
Totally. Yeah, it makes sense. And as both of you are talking, it seems like there's really an interchangeability between the words authenticity and presence, and the resistance and the hard stuff comes in the overthinking. It comes in the planning. It comes in the trying to architect it before it's happened. And then throughout this process, we've been able to see like what actually ended up happening and the overthinking pieces, and where what we planned or thought about didn't even necessarily end up being what came out in the presence, wasn't even the true authentic expression. And I know for me, before we got started on everything, I was kind of in charge of the brand and more sort of the business setup pieces and getting the podcast art and the website up. And what do all these pieces that, hold up the podcast episodes look and feel like? And what do we message that we're doing here? What do we say about what this podcast is about or who Sarah is? And we had so many calls talking about it like mad scientists, like upside down and backwards. Could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be this? Could it be that? And you almost get to the point of being like, should we even do this? Like, what are we talking about? Who cares? And you had to almost drop all of that and be like, let's just try, you know? And when we were willing to just try, something amazing came out. And then we built on top of that, and we built on top of that. And the transformation for you as host and for us as team that happened when we just like dropped all the planning and the overthinking, and also the notion that trying means overthinking, over-architecting, over-strategizing. Because I think, you know, we all have this school mindset of, if I write more words, it means I worked harder and it means it's better. When really, like, I think Mark Twain said, I would have written a shorter sentence if I had the time. Like, we're trying to get down to that core essence, that one thing that we need to communicate, not the dissertation, because we think that makes other people look at us and say, oh, she really tried on that, you know? And for every little element of the podcast, I remember even coming up with the art, thought about it a lot, tried a lot of things. And then one night, Jess and I were on the phone and Jess was like, use this photo. And then I was like, okay, here's the text. And in 10 seconds, we came up with it. And so it was like maybe 40 hours of thinking and then the 1 second of its real birth and conception. And so I think would challenge everybody to look at, like, was the result of my thinking really even related to the thinking, or was the right thing just spontaneously birthed at the right time? And maybe I could have dropped a lot of that thinking and planning.
Yeah. Pick her 7th grade school photo. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny because, yeah, we did spend so much time really thinking about the thumbnail and the importance of it and what it could be. And we're going through the photos to pull certain selects out of, like, your incredible library of photos. If you guys don't know, we bake them throughout the season, but Sarah has this amazing library of, like, all different chapters of her life, these photos that they got digitally like put up on a website so she can access all of them. It's like the coolest thing ever. I have to do with my childhood photos now. But we're going through and I saw this one and I was like, this feels like it stops you in your tracks. Like the color, the lighting, the age, who is this? Like, I don't know why I just saw it in like the top charts on Apple in my mind. I was like, Grace, work your magic. How do we make this a cover? And she's like, done in 2 seconds.
I love the look on my face in that photo. I mean, the hair is spectacular, but the look is one of just such eagerness. Like I am so ready for 7th grade. I am so, like, everything about it is just lighting me up. You know, I'm like, bring it on, world. I mean, I love that. You know, I think when you were talking, Grace, I started to think about what's the difference between effort and intention. You know, and you talked about presence. Like, for me, the big shift this year has been about being intentional and letting everything else flow from that. Now, I'm still trying, you know, but when I'm intentional, it isn't quite as hard. You know, that's where the ease comes, because I can do what aligns with the intention and I can filter out the other things. And it's just been a really, I think we've made a shift from effort to intention with the way we've even worked together. How do we honor each other's commitments to one another? How do we honor each other's time? How do we, you know, like, how do we want to put an episode out that honors the time of the listener or the viewer? We don't need to talk for 2.5 hours. Let's say it in 45 minutes. Come on, you know, let's do that, you know, just little, I think, in little moments.
I think too, for anyone who is thinking of whether it is a podcast or launching anything out there, like, hopefully you guys are piecing this together, but it's that you're not going to have it all figured out. You actually have to move, and then you will have something to react to. But until you move, it's like you're stagnant. You're spinning your wheels. You're in neutral, just revving the engine. Like you have a lot of momentum behind it, but until you actually take that step, put it out there, and then feel what it feels like to have that there, then you can start to make tweaks and whatever you want to do. But yeah, there was a lot of time, especially like all of us together were like, okay, cool, we can make it the biggest, the best, all of our skill sets. This is so fun. And we still just need to put one foot in front of the other.
That was all of February, right? It was like do this and create that, and we're going to have an Ella, a parent company, and a this, and we came down to like, let's just fucking launch the podcast. Let's just let's get episode 1 out there, like really
get the 10-year plan going, guys. We were like,
Well, it's such a good reminder because there's such a goal culture and a manifestation culture that we're all in that asks you to be like, do you know what you want? And if you don't know, are you going anywhere?
Have you put it out there? I mean, have you stated it clearly?
Exactly. And that, it's great to have like a seed of that, but it's also can be paralyzing to just sit in the, where are we going? But is it $1 billion company? Is it a book? Like, we don't even know until you take one step in front of the other. And you can do the most amazing planning and have a vision and then launch one episode or put one post out there and realize no one likes this. Let's try something else. Or that really worked. Let's hone in on that a little bit more. It's always going to be a test and learn. Even with relationships, like you could meet someone and think, this is my person. And then 2 weeks later, realize like there's so many things we're not aligned on. Like have a sense of where you're going, but don't let that paralyze you or stop you from having the present authentic experience of what that thing is.
I think another key piece of a project like this is you've got to be having fun.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do it otherwise?
Right. And enjoying the process.
And the people that you're working with. And, this was like, there wasn't a single meeting that we had that I was like, oh God, I've got to go. We've got to have this meeting, today. I mean, there were days when I was feeling a lot of trepidation around recording or maybe the topic we were going to talk about and feeling a little like, oh, am I ready for this? But having that time blocked with the 3 of us on my calendar on a weekly basis was something I still look forward to, I mean, and it was fun, even in the challenging, around the challenging topics, around the things that I thought, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. I'm really, God, we spent an hour texting about how do I do more on social media. And I was just like fretting about it, and then, I realized I just have to do it. Yeah. I just have to do it,
Yeah.
It's the same thing as going to the gym, actually, I mean, you just have to pick up the 20-pound weight or whatever it is, you just have to get on the bike.
I posted this on my socials yesterday. I was like, how do people film themselves in public? Like, what are you guys doing there? And it was like the most basic answers. It's like, set up a tripod, prop it up somewhere, or have a friend film you. And I'm like, that feels so foreign to me. And everyone's like, yeah, it's going to feel foreign to you until you do it. And then it doesn't feel that weird anymore. And I was like, okay, cool. Got it.
It's the most boring advice ever is you just have to do it. And we spend so much time procrastinating on the doing it. Like, let me read a book first or talk to a coach or talk to 5 friends or do a little research and you have to be able to catch yourself and be like, at what point am I just procrastinating actually doing this step? And I was talking to a client the other day who was like, we need to, do research and set meeting dates and make a plan. And I was like, all you have to do is email, like we are just procrastinating doing the emails because we're afraid more work's going to come on once we send that email. But what if no one responds to that email? Maybe we need to send 45 more emails. And I think looking at where we're procrastinating by doing things that we think are good and right, what can you do today where you're just like, okay, fuck whatever I thought I needed to do before I do this. Like, let me just do it.
I think about how many decades I spent trying to escape my hard feelings. It's the same thing. And I went to grad school. I got myself involved in projects. I mean, anything I could do to avoid my hard feelings, right? Procrastination. And then all of a sudden one day, I don't know what shifted, but I just decided to sit in them and be with them. And I was like, this is what I was afraid of? Oh my God. Like, I thought this might kill me. I acted like it was a bear chasing me, I was going to run. I mean, it was comical almost that day, because I remember just laughing at the universe, being like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. 3 decades spent afraid of this. Great. Let's get on with it now.
You had like a microcosm of that come up this year too. And we were talking, and I think your trajectory of filming last year, a good chunk of the podcast, right? All of our episodics, those beautiful visuals on the lake and the lake house, you guys have seen them, feeling so authentic. And then kind of going from like, wow, this is my purpose. Like, I'm in my zone of genius. Like, I feel so me. I feel so alive. And then going back to day-to-day life that maybe didn't match it in all of those ways. How did you remedy that discrepancy, and how did you kind of like fill in the gap over time?
I mean, that week of filming with you guys was just insanely transformational. I mean, I was so lit up. When you talk about human design, I'm a manifesting generator. I felt like I found the thing. It was the thing. Now, as a manifesting generator, I recognize there's going to be a lot more things that are going to light me up like that in my life, but it was an experience of being more lit up, more aligned, more congruent, more authentic, all those things that I have had felt in like maybe ever in my whole life. I mean, I could identify little glimmers, but in such a dramatic way. And then I had to leave and go back home and get 4 kids off to school. I mean, moms out there, August and September. I mean, it's a grind. And I was transitioning everybody back. And then I had a kid who got really sick and was sick fall. And it was very scary. What was going on? Well, we didn't understand what was happening to her. And it was a whole thing. And it was just like, oh my God. And I have another kid who has really serious health issues. So this was number 2. And I was thinking, I don't know if I can do this. But I have to do this. And in the meantime, you guys are editing hours and hours of video from the podcast. And I feel like nothing's happening, because we're not launching a podcast. Now we are launching a podcast, but it's all the behind the scenes stuff. And I'm like, how long does this take? Because all I really wanted you guys to do was provide me with a distraction. I wanted to go back to our week so I didn't have to be in the uncomfortable feelings I was having around, this is really hard. I'm really scared. I don't know if I can do this. This isn't really fun, right? My life is now on hold to take care of this human who I love dearly, and I want to do this, but it's really hard and I'm really scared. And that just kept spinning, and it took a long time to edit that.
It did.
A lot of big files.
A lot of big files. And it was a long fall, and it was a gray winter. And I recognized that instead of really sitting with those feelings, I just was eating them. I was eating them and I was distracting myself from them. I was scrolling. I was, I was just all the things, right? And I started to feel even worse, right? Because now I feel really uncomfortable in my skin, I put on some weight. I didn't like the way I was feeling puffy. All my pants were too tight. I went to the gym and I just was not feeling like as strong, as lean as like my, just the way when I feel really good. And I mean, there were a lot of things that weren't really working very well in my life. My marriage was not going well. My kids were struggling as a result of it. There was just a lot. And here we were, and I was like, could we just launch the podcast, please? Because that'll make everything better. Give me that hit of heroin again was kind of what it was I was looking for, right? Make me feel better. Take this away. I don't want to sit with all this, I don't know, bullshit. I don't know when she's going to get better. I don't know if my marriage is going to survive. I don't know if my kids can handle all this stress. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know. And that was just intolerable for me. And we just kept moving forward with the podcast. But that's what I do. I just keep going forward, and then it comes to launch time. And it's April 4th. And I had come back from a really great spring break ski trip with the kids, and we had a great time. But the whole time I was there, I was just feeling this sense of I can't live like this. And the like this part was really hard to face. It wasn't just, I need to take better care of myself. It was, I need to really look at all these things that are just not aligned. And within like the first 2 weeks of the launch of the podcast, the universe just said, were you serious? Were you really serious? You're really going to be authentic? Well, here are the things. Here are the things that are not aligned with who you are and who you want to be in the world. And it was excruciating, but I think the second episode dropped the day before I filed for divorce. And, that just is what it is. For a long time, I knew that it wasn't for me. And I tried really hard. I kept trying all the things. Working on me, working on us, trying to make it better, trying to figure out why it wasn't better. Just thinking that if I kept trying harder, it was going to work out. And it wasn't working out. And, neither one of us were doing well. Our kids weren't either, because, this kind of stress and tension is not good in a family. And, I made the hard call. And I don't want to say it's because of the podcast, but, for me, the podcast was kind of this, I put a stake in the ground and I said very clearly, this is who I am. And I knew, I know that's who I am. But then all the things that are not me are not meant for me. I had to let go of. And so I had to let go of that relationship and let it become something different. I had to let go of my inability to tolerate uncomfortable feelings, and I had to sit with them again. So I stopped eating my feelings. I did. I stopped. And I incidentally, in about a period of 3.5 months, lost 30 pounds just by being present and sitting and being real with me and my kids and my life. And I don't want to make this about the weight, but I was carrying a lot and I let it go.
We were talking about this conversation a couple of days ago, and I was thinking about the concept of metabolism and what does it mean to metabolize something? You can metabolize emotions, you metabolize experiences, and by not deciding to sit with the uncomfortable feelings or any kind of feelings, by not deciding to give intentional time to the things in your life that you need to, you're not metabolizing them. They're all just there. It is this weight that you're carrying around. There's this Rumi poem about how if you don't let all of the feelings into your house, then they're all just outside the house. They're like these scary things knocking at the windows, and you can close the doors and everything. And then at some point you can't even leave the house anymore because it would be way too scary to do that. But if you just open the doors and the windows and let them sweep through and even wipe your house clean, you're making room for lightness and ease and something totally new and better to come in. And I feel like that's really kind of the spiritual undertone of what happened with the feelings and letting the weight come off. And, weight is piled up emotions or baggage, stuff like that. So I wonder how everybody else can also look at what am I carrying and how can I release that? And releasing might be as easy as just sitting with it and feeling it too.
So good, Grace.
I love that. I love it so much, Grace. I think that's just such a little nugget that I hope people sit with, because I think I had 10 pounds of sadness. I had 10 pounds of disappointment. I had 10 pounds of, just all these things, right? Fear. I had so much fear. I don't want to be that person that gets divorced twice. I can't be that person. So I'll be miserable. Instead, I'll accept this, even though I know it's not for me, because I can't be that person. I'm too afraid, too scared. I mean, that's real shit that we carry. It affects us physically. This whole process, I mean, it has been so powerful to have an episode drop every week for me, every Wednesday, to remind me who I am. I wish this for everyone. To have a way to hold up a mirror for yourself and to see who you really are. Those pictures we used of me as a little person, I mean, I didn't know which ones you were going to choose. And so every week I would see what you picked. And it would be like, oh my God, that's me. I was 8. Like, I remember being 8, God, I just love being 8. Oh, would I kill to be 8 again, Like, I wish this for everyone. To have people in their lives who can sit with you when you hold up that mirror, right? And that's what you guys did.
It's so fascinating. I can't help but think of the timeline of things too, because I think it was a 3rd, maybe it was a 4th episode where you talked about your first divorce, and thinking that this episode is airing and what do the words mean now,
right?
As you're going through it in real time, and also having this moment of like public versus private knowledge, right? Like now you're at a place where you've started metabolizing this divorce, and that is why it's coming out in this episode today. But there was probably also feelings when it was coming out that was like, wait, new community, like I do want to share this with you, but I'm not ready, and I have another story coming.
Yeah, just wait, there's more.
How did you process all of that?
I mean, at first I felt a lot of shame, like I was supposed to be like the expert, right? I was going to tell my stories that I had really worked through and share my nuggets of wisdom, right? And my teachings. And here I had this thing going on in my life, real time, where I had no nuggets of wisdom and no teachings to offer. I'm still not sure I do, but what I do know is that I was carrying a lot of shame around that for a while, and I mean, I think maybe the beauty of it is this whole experience has reminded me of something I knew, but I didn't remember, is that if you're really going to walk the path of trying to be your best self, you will have things, you will be confronted by things for the rest of your life, the work is never done, and new opportunities will show up in every decade and every year and every month and every week and every day for you to recommit to what it is you want, who it is you say you are, that intention. And there's no shame in that. That's called life. That's living your life. That isn't something that you did to yourself. That is life. Life just happening. And how you respond to it, that's you. That's your opportunity, is what you're going to do in those moments. Choosing yourself or not. And I think that shift for me was when I knew I could talk about this, and I knew I had to, right? I mean, we didn't air an episode. We said we were going to air. But I mean, shit happens.
Mm-hmm.
We work so hard to try to pretend like it doesn't.
Or that we're above it. Yeah, that was me, but it was in the past. Now I'm here.
Now I'm here.
Now that stuff doesn't affect me anymore. And it's like, that's just not how life works.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we believe at some level that if we're healed, then we aren't affected by anything? Nothing bad will happen? I don't know. I think I
think we believe that, but it's not true.
Yeah, no, and it's not true.
I think there's a difference between being like presently activated about something and then letting it settle and then being able to share your true perspective on it. And you see a lot of people now on social media in pursuit of engagement or authenticity share while they're activated. Like, I'm crying, this just happened. And then it can actually feel a little inauthentic because it's an ask for sympathy. And, what if that person isn't feeling that way tomorrow? Like, maybe they'll completely change their mind. And I think you've really been able to sit with it for the whole season and now share in such a calm and confident way because it's not so activated within you. And that's the difference. I think like vulnerability, authenticity doesn't mean that like in the heat of your anger, you go yell at someone. It means you sit with your anger and then you're able to have a calm and present conversation with them because it's actually not necessarily your authenticity when you're so activated in that feeling either.
Well, that's just something I continue to practice. I think that's our challenges, human. How do we not be so, the human nature is to be reactive, right? Mm-hmm. How do we shift that and become maybe more responsive or even actually, be more intentional about how we act, with our words, how we create the future that we really want.
I wanted to circle back to the heroine of the first recording and then compare it to when we actually launched. It wasn't the same drug, and I think like when you launch something, you expect like viral, like we're taking off. And I think everybody needed to realize like we're playing a different game now. Like the hit of heroin of the first shoot, like enticed you into the door and was like, yes, come on, Sarah, this is what you're meant to do. But then you were asked to show up for something different, for a sustainable long game of enjoying the process and, it turning into something that's a more sustainable high and not just like a one-off. Tell us about how that experience has been for you.
I don't know that I knew what to expect, but I was believing that this was going to be big. It felt like this was going to be big. Now, I didn't know what big meant. It's been huge. But I think in my mind, initially, big was like, it's going to go viral. We're going to have, 5 million followers. I'm exaggerating, okay? Millions of views and listens. It was going to be numbers. Mm-hmm. It was going to be what other people thought. Okay? The big, the huge is what happened to me and what I saw happen to both of you. And the little texts I got, the DMs I got from Ireland, from England, from family members, from cousins, from people I haven't talked to, like people I went to school with who reached out and were like, oh my God, I can't believe that you went through that. I had no idea you had cancer. I wish I could have been there for you. Here's my phone number. If you ever need anything, call me. Or I look forward to your podcast every week. I'm learning so much. Or, your voice is so soothing. I listen to it just to feel calm about the things that I'm dealing with in my life. Like these little kinds of things. And I mean, there were a few every week that came. That was the big. That was the huge. It wasn't a Kardashian moment, but it was so great. It was so great. I mean, that episode with my mom, every bit of this was worth it just to have the relationship I have with her right now. Just to know that my kids have that recording to watch of their grandmother and seeing who she really is, that it'll live on forever, right? Those little things, that was the big, that was the huge, that was the viral.
I think that's so important too for people who are putting things out there. All of us, I mean, even like astrology readers and human design readers, like everyone's like, this is destined in the stars. Like, you guys, this is going to be mega. Like, so the expectation too was like, okay, we're going to put our best foot forward, do our best work, and let's see how it goes and what the path is and the trajectory. And I think there was this anticipation of like, that I think that's also where the perfectionism came in too, because we're like, okay, if this is going to hit 1 million people, like everyone says, then we need to have it all buttoned up and perfect. And in fact, we needed to just put an episode out to know what we're doing for that moment when the millionth person listens. Everything's like in a system. We figured out our method. We know what we're doing. Like everything is so buttoned up. But we couldn't get there if the first episode was like that. Like we had to put it out and have that feedback from the audience. And I think for me, watching the community of Wholey Schmidt build slowly was something that I thought was so important. Like anytime the word viral came up, I was like, don't think about viral. Like we need to build a community that is like with us and has similar values and interests, and we need to be speaking with them and engaging with them and understanding them and figuring out how to serve them. Like that is the big, like you're talking about. And I think so many creators out there, they want those numbers immediately, but you go viral, you don't have a community. You have like a flash in the pan, and what do you really want out of social media, out of connection, out of sharing your truly authentic, pivotal life moments? You want a community. You want that fireside chat, those people to reflect with you, to share theirs. I mean, some of our biggest episodes were the Wholey Schmidt moments. But I think so many people want that viral moment or want something to take off big from the beginning. And yeah, I think you kind of nailed it, Sarah, that those big moments are not what you think they're going to be. The ones that actually make a difference, that make you feel like you're impacting people in a powerful way, are those little comments, are the community you're slowly building, are hearing other people's Wholey Schmidt moments and what's going on for them and how they see part of their story in your story. I mean, that was such a big part of doing this project and being passionate about this project, was hearing your story, even if I had no relation to what you had experienced. Something that you said like struck a chord in my soul, and I would have so many moments watching back or in the edit where I would just start spontaneously crying where I was like, oh my God, like you're so connected to your humanness. And I think there's also something upon hearing others' stories when they are so vulnerable and honest and said from a place of integration, that you realize how connected we all are to each other. Like you're like, oh, I feel for her in a way that like I know we are one, like the spiritual, consciousness of it all too.
I feel like I've known you both for my whole life. But I have, because I shared so much with
we were there.
You, right? And then you shared with me, right? Mm-hmm. And we really formed our own community. I mean, I said this from the very beginning when we started working together. I'm like, I only want to do this if it really feels like a collaboration. Mm-hmm. That we're all like, we're all connected and feeling like we have a chance to really shine and do what we love. And because your enjoyment of this was as important as what I wanted out of it. I mean, it was just like that. It was just critical to me. I mean, and I saw both of you shift and change so much. I mentioned this yesterday, Jessica, when we were chatting. I've seen you over the last year in your own podcasting work, apart from this, and your own social media stuff. And I think it's amazing how you found your voice and really stepped into it this year. And it's been amazing and just such an honor to witness it from my seat, as your friend.
I think watching you go out there and share so vulnerably your story and like claim that space, kind of how you were saying in the beginning where your 7th grade self was like, I have a big story to tell, but I can only do it in this context. And I don't want to overshadow someone here. I don't want to do this, or, I don't want to step on toes, or let me just do it in the places that feel safe. Seeing you so boldly go after it and share, and seeing the impact it had on me, it had on the crew, it had on the team, it had on the people listening, the audience, I was like, oh, it's almost a disservice to not step into your own voice. And that really inspired me to be more aware of that, more conscious of that, to work harder to sit in that presence. Like that is where I think my voice started coming more online again, because I was like, let me just be present and react and listen to my inner reactions versus that voice in your head that's like, okay, does that person want me to say that? Do they feel like this? Like, no, shut all of that down. What do I feel? Because that matters. That's valid in this moment. That's worthy of sharing. So, and the little crystal we got from Sedona, I got this guy. It's about the throat chakra, and I keep it next to me when I record all the time.
I love it. Pulling on that same thread, I feel like I've had so many parallel personal experiences to you, Sarah, in terms of I let go of a relationship at the same time that you were going through your relationship transformation. And it was a really hard one for me. And it was exactly on April 4th, which was my birthday, that he came over and we really were like, this is over. And it had been something I'd been thinking about for a really, really long time, and finally broke through, and feeling like energetically we were disconnected. I wasn't all consumed thinking about it all the time. And in that, like, found a new version of myself, because I didn't have this like other department on inside me all the time that was thinking about his needs and what is the relationship and where is this going. And it gave me a piece of myself back. And like you, I've been so focused on being with whatever arises, really feeling my feelings. And when I first got into this kind of inner work, like, I don't know, like in 2017, I think I had a first session with this astrologer, Danny Beinstein, and she told me that I was like Teflon. And she was like, you have no feelings, like they're in there, but we can't get them out. Like, you're so hard to penetrate. And now when I have a feeling come up, I'm like, oh, there's a feeling, and I cry and I feel it, and I take a minute, and a lot of times I go sit in the shower, because that's my thing. Whenever I have a big feeling, I'm like, I'm going to sit in the shower, and I really feel the feeling, and I really try and uncouple it from the trigger. And instead of blaming or shaming the client or the friend or the relationship or the family member, I take the whole thing to myself and I say, let me uncouple this. Here's my opportunity to sit with this feeling. And I really sit with the feeling and move through it. And sometimes that means you do need to bring it up with that person still. And sometimes you've metabolized it all on your own and you don't have to. And I feel like in doing that, like, I'm bringing so much less baggage to the table, and like am really actually able to show up with presence and listening and more clarity. And all of our collective energy and all of the work we've done as individuals is really what comes together and makes this project so, magnetic and interesting and authentic and shiny. And it doesn't even necessarily have to do with the things we say to each other, but the energy that we're committed to bringing to each other every week. And I think, as somebody who's, been a marketer for the last 10 years and had a lot of great success doing it, I've also had to let go of any pressure I put on myself to be like, this has to be huge and I have to make it the best ever, and know that me just being me is what does that, rather than any other pressure to show up.
I think too, like, the universe has a divine way of, especially when you work together and have like a collective team on something, it gives us all the medicine we need to become our best versions of self, and then starts to give like alignments in that direction. Like, Sarah, even thinking about the length of editing, right, in the fall, and how you really needed it then. Like, there is a world in which if you were not at that place mentally, if you were like at the place you were in April, that the editing could have been done earlier. But I feel like life kind of puts those roadblocks up of like, oh, this took longer because X, and this took longer because this, because it's trying to get everyone at the right speed at the right time and give us the gifts in order to evolve and grow too.
Agreed.
Yeah. Grace, as you were talking, I was just reflecting on, I think as our work, progressed. Like I would have a question. I would have a concern. Something would be like, I'd be worried about something and I'd, group text it and, send a voice note. Your responses became so much more clear, dialed in, like just exquisite. I mean, Jessica, yours were too. So we talked about the evolution of your voice and, but Grace, it was amazing. And you would respond within seconds. And I would be like, how did she just pull that out of her ass? That presence, I could feel it. I could feel it. It was very real in the process. I mean, we were all stepping into something together. And it was really cool because I knew you guys had my back, right? So I knew I could do this episode today and I could say what I needed to say. And whatever anybody has to say about it, that's fine. That's about them, not me. We've got each other's backs. And that's just a beautiful thing to know. And I think when you know that, you can do challenging things, That's why I think I said earlier, if somebody's out there listening and they're thinking, oh, I want to do something like that, have a couple people in your corner, who are really, really behind you, right? Who will, listen to your, worries and your concerns and your rants and your this and your that and do so from a very, present place. Because it's daunting. Those videos are out there now. And, I'm really glad they are, but it still can be a little daunting some days.
As you were talking, and the interesting point about the voice note response is, I think a lot of times people assume that if someone asks them a question, it means they're doing something wrong.
Oh.
And it starts when you're growing up. Like your parents are like, where are you going? What are you doing? And you start being
what do you mean?
Yeah, like, or you lie, or you something. And then in your career, like if you're working with someone and they're like, what are you doing today? It could be easy to be defensive and be like, well, I am working hard and I'm doing this. And I think we created such a nice environment of like curiosity. And whenever you asked a question, I just be like, oh, I just need to clarify this for Sarah, or maybe I need clarity around this as well. And I think the environment of trust and all assuming that we all had each other's back and best interests at heart, like really helped create a really healthy environment of, sharing and educating each other and being clear and being honest. And I think everybody can release a sense of I'm doing something wrong and, just maybe extend more empathy and clarity if somebody does ask them a question too.
Yeah. Well, we each had such clear roles. I mean, there was a part of me that just was trying to figure out, how does this work?
Totally. Yeah.
Teach me, help me. Like, how is this happening?
It's cool.
But you're right. There is that. I'm afraid to ask a question and be viewed as being critical or suspicious or, whatever it is, when it's just curiosity.
Or dumb. Like a lot of times people don't want to ask because they're like, oh, I should know this, and everything you asked, you shouldn't have known. Like it was our domain to know and educate and share. And so I think it's all based on how the container feels that makes the communication flow really well. And I think we all participated in creating that.
If anybody's listening, they're probably wondering, like, what are we going to do next?
Yes. What's in store?
I know,
Sarah?
but you tell me.
Fill everyone in.
I think one of the most beautiful things is we're not sure. What does it mean now to have this whole season out there? And we're not sure. In the next few months, right? We've already set aside some time to brainstorm. And one of the things that's been most fun for me this season has been those Wholey Schmidt moments, those 2 episodes we did, and seeing the reaction, the response. It was amazing. The views of the number of people who watched makes me believe that there's a lot of hunger out there for a space where people can tell their stories.
And those were the least planned. Like both of them were basically like day before, do you want to do this? And then the person jumped on. We didn't have prep questions really. Like you just had such
three
authentic...
questions.
3 questions.
We had 3 questions.
That's our magic number, I think.
Yeah. But it really speaks to, there's episodes we planned a lot more that, were amazing and great. But what took off the most were just those present, authentic moments we had with people.
So good. I think season 2, for sure, everyone can expect more stories, more Wholey Schmidt moments, more authenticity, the evolution of everyone again in another season. Yeah. And I'm excited for more connection with the audience, with the growing listenership, with the growing Instagram and growing YouTube, and everyone on there who's connecting with us digitally. Like, how else can we best serve, connect, be in touch, be in community with? That really interests me a lot.
That's the piece that I love most. I mean, those mornings when I'd wake up and I'd see a message or a comment on, on YouTube or something. I mean, I just want to find more ways for that to happen, for us to have a real conversation. I don't want, I didn't do this just so I could keep talking. For me, the listening and the learning is so incredible.
It's interesting to see what the catalyst for community ends up being. And I know we thought so much about what is community before this, and community is a brand pillar, and community manifests like this or like that. And one of the things we want to do is really look at the season and see, like, where did most of the community show up, around what themes, and how can we continue to support that with more conversations or tools or outlets to have that community come online. And one of our big learnings is that you can't just have community without you first putting something out there and giving something for a community to form around. You can't just say, I want this. You have to be the one to show up first. You've got to get on the dance floor first, and then everybody else can join you.
Yeah. So I guess we got to keep getting on the dance floor. We have to keep dancing.
And join us in the comments, in the conversations, in the DMs. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what resonates, what's landing. I feel like I'm saying your outro now.
You did a good job of it. But I would be so lit up if we, started to get more submissions on the website. People who wanted to share their Wholey Schmidt moment. Join us. Really, I hope that people are seeing that being vulnerable and open to this is such a beautiful thing. It's only good. Only good things happen, that would be really exciting to me. I said this at the beginning, I've had the best year. I mean, it's been a year. Shit. But it has been the best. I wouldn't change a thing. And I wish everyone could have this experience of just being so accompanied, in their life, and a work experience like this that is so healthy, fun. Supportive, real. We held each other accountable. We did all the things that you need to do in a work environment, but we did it with such grace and intention and beauty. And that's just what a gift.
Just getting started.
Yeah, I know.
Let's getting started, guys. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Season 1.
Does everybody
congratulations.
Anybody have a cup of tea to hold up?
I have some water, which is bad luck. But
cheers to season 1. All right, everybody. This is really it. This is the end of season 1. Please take a moment. Leave us some comments. Tell us what you want to hear in season 2. Give us some ideas. We invite your feedback, and we thank you so much for joining us this year on this incredible journey. We'll see you in season 2.